I never thought I'd be standing over my father's casket with my sister just 10 feet away, the first time we'd been in the same room in a decade. 10 years of birthdays, holidays, and milestones gone because she couldn't stand to see me happy. The day she sabotaged my engagement was supposed to be one of the most beautiful moments of my life. Instead, it became the day our family fractured beyond repair. Dad's attorney kept glancing between us during the service, his eyes betraying that he knew something we didn't. "Your father's will contains specific instructions," he whispered to me at the reception. "Everyone needs to be present for the reading." I nodded, feeling the weight of the diamond pendant Dad had given me on my 21st birthday, the same pendant my sister had always coveted. Little did I know that pendant was just the beginning of what Dad had planned. He knew about everything, the sabotage, the lies, the manipulation, and he'd been playing a long game none of us saw coming. When the attorney cleared his throat and began to read, I watched my sister's smug expression slowly crumble. Dad had discovered her secret, and in death, he was about to change everything. Growing up in suburban Massachusetts, our family looked picture-perfect from the outside. Dad was a respected cardiologist at Boston Medical, Mom taught piano, and my sister Elaine and I were high achievers in everything we did. We lived in a colonial-style home with a wraparound porch where we'd drink hot apple cider during fall and host 4th of July barbecues in summer. The kind of place where neighbors dropped by with casseroles when someone got sick. But beneath that Norman Rockwell facade, Elaine and I were locked in a silent war that started when I was 7 and she was 9. Mom always said it was normal sibling rivalry, but Dad would watch us with those observant doctor's eyes, noticing things others missed. "Caroline," he said to me once after Elaine had accidentally spilled cranberry juice on my science fair project the night before judging, "some people can't shine unless they dim everyone else's light first." He helped me rebuild the project overnight, and I ended up winning first place. Elaine didn't speak to me for weeks. High school intensified everything. I was drawn to literature and drama, while Elaine excelled in sciences, following Dad's footsteps. When I was cast as the lead in our school production of Our Town, Elaine told everyone at school that I'd only gotten the part because I was sleeping with Mr. Daniels, the drama teacher. The rumor spread like wildfire. I still remember walking into the cafeteria and having conversations stop, feeling eyes on me, hearing whispers. Dad drove me to school every day for 2 weeks after that, letting me cry in the car before we arrived. "This will pass," he promised, "and you'll be stronger for it." He was right, but the incident cemented a pattern that would define our relationship for years. The tipping point came during my sophomore year at Tufts. I'd been dating Michael for almost a year. He was studying architecture at MIT, brilliant and kind, with this infectious laugh that could light up a room. Our relationship was the one thing Elaine couldn't touch, couldn't tarnish, until she did. It was Thanksgiving break, and we were all home for the holiday. Mom was preparing her traditional turkey with chestnut stuffing, and the house smelled like sage and warmth. Michael had come for dinner, his first real holiday with my family. Everything was going well until Elaine cornered him in the kitchen. I walked in to find them standing too close, her hand on his arm, something intimate in their posture. They jumped apart when they saw me, and Michael looked guilty. That expression haunted me for years. Nothing happened, he swore later, but something had shifted. A seed of doubt had been planted. Dad noticed, of course. After dinner, he pulled me aside to his study, that sanctuary of leather-bound medical journals and the lingering scent of pipe tobacco he'd given up years before. "Your sister is jealous of what you have with Michael," he said simply, polishing his glasses with the handkerchief he always kept in his pocket. "Don't let her get between you." I tried to follow his advice, but Elaine was relentless. She'd find reasons to call Michael for homework help or show up at campus events where she knew we'd be. It became a shadow over our relationship, though Michael repeatedly assured me there was nothing to worry about. What none of us knew then was that Dad had begun keeping a journal, a detailed account of everything he observed between Elaine and me. He'd been documenting the pattern for years, every sabotage, every lie, every manipulation. I wouldn't discover this journal until after his death, but it would change everything I understood about our family. Despite Elaine's efforts, Michael proposed during our senior year. He'd created an elaborate scavenger hunt across campus, ending at the bench where we'd had our first conversation about Gaudi's architecture and my dream of visiting Barcelona. He'd even designed a miniature of La Sagrada Familia with the ring hidden inside. It was perfect, personal, meaningful. And that's when Elaine made her grandest gesture of destruction, the one that would sever our relationship for a decade and set in motion events that would culminate at Dad's funeral, with his will as the final arbiter of a lifetime of rivalry. Our engagement party was set for Memorial Day weekend at my parents' home. Mom had transformed the backyard with string lights and white roses. Michael's parents had flown in from Chicago, and even my grandmother had made the trip from Florida despite her arthritis. I'd spent weeks planning every detail, from the champagne toast to the custom playlist that would play softly in the background. The morning of the party, I woke to a text from Michael. "Need to talk before tonight. Important." Something in the brevity sent a chill through me, but I pushed it aside. Pre-engagement jitters, I told myself. I was helping Mom arrange appetizer platters when Elaine arrived, 3 hours early. She wore a white dress, subtle enough to claim innocence, obvious enough for me to notice the deliberate choice. "Need any help?" she asked, kissing Mom's cheek and avoiding my addings. "You can set up the bar," Mom suggested, oblivious to the tension crackling between us. Dad watched from the patio door, his expression unreadable. Later, I'd learn he was already sick by then, the early stages of the pancreatic cancer that would take him 8 years later. Already keeping secrets, already making plans. The hours ticked by, and Michael still hadn't arrived. My calls went straight to voicemail. Guests would be arriving in an hour, and panic was setting in. Dad found me in the kitchen, frantically checking my phone. "Caroline, whatever happens tonight, remember who you are," he said, squeezing my shoulder. It seemed like such a strange thing to say at the time. Elaine was arranging flowers at the dining table, humming to herself. "Maybe he got cold feet," she said without looking up. Men do that sometimes when they realize they're settling. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. It was Michael's parents, arriving early. The look of confusion on their faces when I greeted them alone only heightened my anxiety. "Isn't Michael with you?" his mother asked. "He texted us he was running an errand before meeting us here." By 6 o'clock, guests were arriving in steady streams. I moved through the crowd in a daze, making excuses for Michael's absence while frantically checking my phone. Mom kept shooting me worried glances, while Elaine circulated with drinks, the perfect hostess. At 6:43 p.m., I'll never forget the time on my phone, Michael finally called. "I can't do this, Caroline." His voice sounded strange, distant. "The engagement, the party, any of it. What are you talking about?" I stepped into Dad's study for privacy, my heart pounding. "Where are you? Everyone's here." "Your sister showed me the letters," he said. "Why didn't you tell me you've been seeing someone at school all this time?" The room tilted. "What letters? Michael, I don't know what you're talking about." "The letters to someone named James. Elaine found them in your desk when she was helping your mom set up. Love letters, Caroline. Recent ones." James, a character in the play I was writing for my creative thesis. Fictional letters from a fictional woman to a fictional man. "Those are for my thesis project," I said, my voice shaking. "They're not real. Elaine knows that." Silence on the line. Then, "She has pictures too, Caroline. You and some guy outside your apartment building. kissing. The pieces clicked into place with nauseating clarity. The guy was my cousin Alex, who'd visited from Seattle the month before. The European-style greeting, a kiss on each cheek, captured from an angle that made it look intimate, deliberately misleading. "Michael, that's my cousin. You've heard me talk about Alex. Please, just come here. We can sort this out." "I don't know what to believe anymore," he said. "I need time to think." When I emerged from the study, the party was in full swing. Cheerful conversations, champagne glasses clinking, oblivious guests. And Elaine, watching me from across the room with a champagne flute raised slightly in my direction. A toast, a victory. Dad appeared at my side, taking in my expression. "What happened?" When I explained in hushed tones, something changed in his face, a hardening, a decision being made. "I'll take care of the guests," he said. "You find Michael." But it was too late. By the time I reached Michael's apartment, he'd packed a bag and left for his parents' hotel. He wouldn't see me, wouldn't listen. The damage was done. I returned to an empty house. The party had dispersed, leaving only scattered evidence of the celebration that never happened. Mom was cleaning up in silence, tears streaming down her face. Elaine was gone. Dad sat in his study, writing in what I now know was his journal. When I appeared in the doorway, he looked up with eyes full of a father's pain for his child. "She won't stop," I said, my voice hollow. "She'll never stop." Dad closed his journal and stood up. "Then we have to make her stop." He crossed to his safe, opened it, and removed a small velvet box. Inside was a platinum pendant with a single diamond, a family heirloom from his mother. "This was meant to be your wedding gift," he said. "Take it now. And Caroline, sometimes the only way to win is to walk away from the game entirely." The next morning, I packed my car, withdrew from my final semester, and transferred to complete my degree in California. I cut all contact with Elaine. I changed my number, my email, my social media. I disappeared from her life as completely as she had destroyed mine. What I didn't know then was that Dad had started putting a plan in motion, a plan that would remain hidden for 10 years until we all stood around his grave. The call about Dad's death came on a Tuesday morning. I was in my office at the small literary agency where I'd worked my way up to junior partner over the past decade. Mom's voice cracked as she delivered the news. The cancer had finally won after 8 years of remission and recurrence. "The funeral is Saturday," she said. "He wanted you both there, Caroline. His last wish." Both. The word hung between us. I hadn't spoken Elaine's name aloud in years. "I'll book a flight," I said, because what else could I do? This was Dad. Massachusetts in October was exactly as I remembered. Crisp air, scented with decaying leaves, maples blazing red against gray skies. The family home looked smaller somehow, though nothing had changed except for Mom's hair, now completely silver. She hugged me tightly on the porch. "Elaine arrives tomorrow," she whispered. "Please, for your father's sake, civility." I nodded, the diamond pendant heavy against my collarbone. I'd worn it every day since Dad gave it to me. Friday evening brought the wake at Morrison Funeral Home, where generations of local families had said their goodbyes. I stood beside Mom, accepting condolences from Dad's colleagues, neighbors, old family friends. Each handshake and embrace a reminder of the community I'd left behind. Then I heard her voice, Elaine, greeting someone at the entrance. 10 years had added fine lines around her eyes and a sophisticated bob replacing her once long hair. She'd become the successful doctor Dad had always wanted. Her white coat traded for an expensive black dress that night. Our eyes met across the room. For a moment, I saw something flicker there. Regret? Fear? Then her mask slipped back into place, and she nodded slightly before turning away. Dad's attorney, Mr. Whitman, approached me during a quiet moment. "Your father updated his will last year," he said. He was very specific about certain requirements. We'll need to meet after the burial, both you and your sister. The funeral itself was a blur of hymns and eulogies. I spoke briefly about Dad's compassion, his wisdom, his quiet strength. Elaine talked about his medical achievements, his mentorship, his dedication. Two daughters describing different facets of the same man, never once acknowledging each other. It was at the reception in my parents' home, now just Mom's home, that the facade finally cracked. I was in Dad's study, seeking a moment alone among his books and the lingering scent of his aftershave, when Elaine appeared in the doorway. "You're wearing grandmother's pendant," she said, eyes fixed on my necklace. "Dad gave it to me, the night you destroyed my engagement." She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. Still dramatic after all these years. It wouldn't have worked out anyway. Michael wasn't right for you. "That wasn't your decision to make," I said, feeling 10 years of carefully contained rage threatening to break free. "I did you a favor," she insisted. "He believed those letters so easily. What kind of trust was that?" I laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. "You want to talk about trust after a lifetime of sabotage?" "Sabotage?" She raised her eyebrows. "That's a convenient narrative." Poor Caroline, always the victim. "You told my entire high school I was sleeping with a teacher. You deliberately misled my fiancé with fictional letters and a photo of me with our cousin. What would you call it?" For a moment, her mask slipped. "I call it survival. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up in your shadow? Sweet Caroline, Dad's obvious favorite, the creative one, the special one. That's not true, isn't it? He gave you that pendant, not me. He always took your side, always made excuses for you." The door opened before I could respond. Mr. Whitman stood there, solemn in his dark suit. "It's time," he said simply. We gathered in the living room, Mom, Elaine, me, and a few close family friends. Mr. Whitman placed his briefcase on the coffee table and removed a thick envelope and what looked like a journal. "Howard Barrett's last will and testament," he began formally. The usual preliminaries followed, assets divided between Mom and us, the house, the investments. Then Mr. Whitman paused, putting on his reading glasses. "Regarding the matter of my personal effects and remaining assets," he read, "I have one condition that must be met before final distribution. My daughters, Caroline and Elaine, must together review the contents of my personal journal, which documents their relationship from childhood to present day." Murmurs rippled through the room. Elaine shifted uncomfortably beside me. Mr. Whitman continued. "Only after they have both read this journal in its entirety, together, will they receive their inheritance. If either refuses, both portions will be donated to Boston Children's Hospital." He handed the leather-bound journal to Mom, who placed it on the cable between Elaine and me. "Dad kept a record of everything," Mom said softly. "Every incident, every competition, every act of sabotage. He knew what was happening between you two, even when you thought he didn't." With trembling hands, I opened the journal to the first page. Dad's familiar handwriting filled the lines. "Caroline, age 7, crying because Elaine told her the hamster died because she didn't love it enough. The truth? Elaine fed it chocolate, which I've warned her is toxic to small animals." Entry after entry, year after year. Every manipulation, every lie, meticulously documented with a doctor's objective precision. But more than that, the patterns he observed, the psychological insights, his growing concern for Elaine's behavior, and then, near the end, the revelation that changed everything. Spoke with Dr. Freeman about Elaine's test results. The diagnosis explains so much of her behavior toward Caroline. Now I understand why conventional discipline and reasoning never worked. She needs treatment, not punishment. I looked up at Elaine, whose face had drained of color. "What diagnosis?" I asked. Mom answered instead. Your father had Elaine evaluated 3 years ago when she was struggling at the hospital. She has a personality disorder that affects how she perceives relationships and processes jealousy. You knew? Elaine whispered, turning to Mom. Your father thought it would be better coming from him when he found the right moment, Mom said. Then the cancer returned. I closed the journal, suddenly understanding Dad's final lesson. This wasn't about exposing Elaine's cruelty or vindicating me. It was about healing, forcing us to confront the truth so we could finally move forward. The final page contains a letter to both of you, Mr. Whitman said. He asked that you read it aloud, Caroline. With a deep breath, I turned to the last entry and began to read my father's final words to his daughters. My dear Caroline and Elaine, I read, my voice unsteady. If you're reading this, it means I've failed to heal the rift between you in my lifetime. This journal isn't meant to assign blame or declare a winner in your lifelong competition. It's meant to offer understanding. Elaine, your condition doesn't excuse your actions, but it explains them. The pathological jealousy, the need to sabotage Caroline's happiness, these are symptoms, not character flaws. There is treatment available. I've arranged everything with Dr. Freeman at Mass General. The choice to accept help is yours now. Caroline, your sister's behavior caused you immense pain, but running away solved nothing. Sometimes, the bravest thing isn't walking away from the game, but changing how it's played. My final wish is that you both read this journal together, witnessing each other's reactions, unable to hide from the truth. Only then can real healing begin. I love you both equally, differently, completely. Dad. Silence filled the room after I finished reading. Elaine sat motionless, tears streaming down her face. The gathered family friends quietly excused themselves, sensing the need for privacy. Only Mom, Mr. Whitman, Elaine, and I remained. Is it true? I finally asked Elaine. The diagnosis? She nodded almost imperceptibly. Borderline personality disorder with narcissistic features, she whispered. Dad arranged an evaluation after I had a breakdown at work. A patient died, and I couldn't accept that I'd made a mistake. I blamed everyone else. Did you start treatment? 2 sessions, she admitted. Then I convinced myself Dad was just trying to fix me because I wasn't perfect, she stopped herself. Like I thought you were. Mr. Whitman cleared his throat. There's one more item, he said, retrieving a small USB drive from his briefcase. Howard asked that you watch this together as well. Mom set up Dad's laptop on the dining table. The video began with Dad sitting in his study, visibly thinner from the cancer, but with clear eyes and a steady voice. The timestamp showed it was recorded just 3 months ago. Girls, he began, if you're watching this, then you've read the journal. You know everything now. But what you don't know is what happened after the engagement party. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. After Caroline left for California, I went to see Michael, Dad continued. I showed him the truth about the letters, about the photo with Alex. He was devastated by how easily he'd been manipulated, how quickly he doubted Caroline. I gasped softly. Dad had never told me this. He wanted to go after you, Caroline, but I advised against it. You needed time to heal, and Michael needed to grow stronger, to be worthy of you. So we made a pact. The video cut to show Dad and Michael sitting together in a coffee shop, dated about 5 years ago. How is she? Michael asked on screen. Building a new life, Dad replied, working at a literary agency in San Francisco, published her first short story last month. Michael smiled sadly. I've read everything she's published, from a distance. Dad's voice returned over the footage. Every year on the anniversary of what should have been your engagement party, Michael and I would meet. I'd update him on your life, Caroline, and he'd tell me about his. He's designed some remarkable buildings over the years, including one in Barcelona. The video showed photographs of a modern cultural center with distinct Gaudí-inspired elements. He never stopped loving you, Caroline, but he respected your need for distance. And, Elaine, Dad's face filled the screen again. Michael knows about your condition now. He understands that your actions came from a place of pain and dysfunction, not pure malice. He's forgiven you. The question is whether Caroline can do the same. The video ended with Dad looking directly into the camera. My death doesn't have to be just an ending. It could be a beginning, if you let it. I love you both. The screen went black. Mom quietly excused herself, leaving Elaine and me alone with the weight of Dad's revelations. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said finally, breaking the silence. I wouldn't expect you to, Elaine replied, staring at her hands. I wouldn't forgive me either. But I understand better now. I closed the journal, running my fingers over the worn leather. Did you hate me that much, all those years? I didn't hate you, she said, looking up. I hated myself for not being you. Everything seemed to come so easily to you. Friends, creativity, Dad's approval. I was the one with the medical degree, following in his footsteps, and still, it wasn't a competition, Elaine. To me, it was. It was the only way I knew how to exist, in opposition to you. We talked for hours that night, painful truths emerging with each passing hour. The sun was rising when we finally exhausted ourselves. Not reconciled, not friends, but no longer enemies either. 3 days later, I used the contact information Mr. Whitman provided to call Michael. His voice, deeper than I remembered, but still achingly familiar, sent a surge of emotions through me. Caroline, he breathed, I've been hoping you'd call. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, the Boston Public Garden, on a bench overlooking the swan boats. 10 years had matured his face, added some gray at his temples, but his smile was exactly as I remembered. Your dad was a remarkable man, he said, after we'd exchanged awkward greetings. He never gave up on any of you. Not you, not Elaine, not me. I'm still processing everything, I admitted. The journal, the diagnosis, you and Dad meeting all these years. I wanted to reach out so many times, Michael said. But I needed to be worthy of a second chance first. I failed you once by doubting you. We were both victims of her manipulation, I said. And now, knowing about her condition, it's complicated. Life usually is, he agreed. The question is where we go from here. That question took months to answer. I extended my leave from the literary agency, renting a small apartment in Cambridge. Elaine began intensive therapy with Dr. Freeman, confronting decades of destructive patterns. Mom found her own healing in bringing her daughters back into the same orbit, if not the same harmonious relationship we'd never truly had. 6 months after Dad's funeral, Elaine and I sat across from each other at a restaurant downtown, our first voluntary meeting. I have something for you, she said, sliding a small velvet box across the table. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny replica of La Sagrada Familia. Michael helped me find it, she explained, not meeting my eyes. It's not an apology. Nothing could be. It's a promise that I'm doing the work, that I'm trying to be better. I touched the charm, feelings too complex to name rising in my throat. Thank you, I managed. Are you seeing him again? She asked carefully. We're taking it very slowly, I said, building something new rather than trying to recapture the past. She nodded. He's a good man. Dad was right about that. Dad was right about a lot of things, I said, finally removing the diamond pendant I'd worn for a decade. I placed it on the table between us. He wanted you to have this eventually, when we both were ready. Elaine stared at it, then pushed it gently back toward me. Keep it, she said. It was his gift to you. I need to stop coveting what's yours and find my own path. It was a small moment, but significant. The first time in our lives that Elaine had willingly stepped back from competition. A year after Dad's death, I moved back to Massachusetts permanently. Not to the family home, but to a brownstone in Boston's South End that I bought with my inheritance. Close enough for weekly dinners with Mom, close enough for monthly therapy sessions with Elaine and her doctor, slowly rebuilding what had never been properly built in the first place. Close enough to explore a second chance with Michael, now a partner at a prestigious architectural firm. Elaine found her own unexpected path to healing. She left her surgical practice to work in psychiatric medicine, specializing in personality disorders. "I understand these patients in a way other doctors can't," she told me once. "I've been where they are." The pendant remained mine, but its meaning transformed. No longer a symbol of Dad's favoritism or my victory in some imagined contest, but a reminder of his wisdom and foresight. He knew that healing would require truth, time, and the courage to face both our demons and each other. As for Michael and me, we decided that some stories deserve a second draft. 3 years after Dad's funeral, he proposed again, not with an elaborate scavenger hunt, but with a simple question asked while walking through the completed cultural center he'd designed in Barcelona, the building Dad had shown in his video. La Sagrada Familia visible through the windows, just as we'd once dreamed. This time, there was no sabotage, no doubt, no betrayal. Just two people who had found their way back to each other through the unexpected legacy of a father who refused to give up on his daughters, even from beyond the grave. Standing here today, 5 years after Dad's funeral, I can see now that his final act wasn't just about reconciliation between Elaine and me. It was about truth as the foundation for everything that matters: love, family, forgiveness. Elaine and I will never have the sisterly bond that others take for granted. Some damage can't be undone completely, but we've built something new in its place: mutual respect, careful honesty, and the shared understanding that comes from facing our darkest truths together. Dad's journal sits on my bookshelf now, a reminder that sometimes the people who love us see us more clearly than we see ourselves. He recognized Elaine's illness when everyone else just saw cruelty. He saw my tendency to run from conflict rather than resolve it. And somehow, even in death, he found a way to address both. Michael and I named our daughter Haley Howard after my father. Elaine is her godmother, a responsibility she approaches with the same intensity she once directed toward destruction, now channeled into protection and love. Some days I still touch the diamond pendant and wonder how different our lives might have been if Dad had shared his insights sooner, if Elaine had gotten help earlier, if I had stayed to fight instead of disappearing. Dad's journal sits on my bookshelf now, a reminder that sometimes the people who love us see us more clearly than we see ourselves. He recognized Elaine's illness when everyone else just saw cruelty. He saw my tendency to run from conflict rather than resolve it. And somehow, even in death, he found a way to address both. Michael and I named our daughter Haley Howard after my father. Elaine is her godmother, a responsibility she approaches with the same intensity she once directed toward destruction, now channeled into protection and love. Some days I still touch the diamond pendant and wonder how different our lives might have been if Dad had shared his insights sooner, if Elaine had gotten help earlier, if I had stayed to fight instead of disappearing. But regret is just another form of running away from what is, and what is enough. More than enough. If there's anything I've learned from this journey, it's that family, whether born or chosen, is both our deepest wound and our greatest healing. The people who can hurt us most are often the ones who can also save us, if we're brave enough to let them try. Whatever family drama you're facing in your own life, remember that understanding is the first step toward healing. Not excusing, not forgetting, but understanding. It makes all the difference. If my story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to this channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned the hard way. Drop a comment below about how you've navigated complicated family relationships. We heal better together. Thank you for listening to my story. Sometimes the most unexpected endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings if we have the courage to turn the page.